From slave to master. From criminal to warden. From prisoner to ruler. Make the shift.
We're going to finish up a series today called Shift. And we've been talking about the life of Joseph in this series, and really, I mean, taking a real high, 30,000 feet flyover of Joseph's life. And today we're going to go up to about 60,000 feet because we're going to cover about 10 chapters in one day, and I'm not going to read hardly any of it. So, but if you haven't read Genesis 37 through 50, I just want to encourage you to do that. It is a fantastic story. It's the stuff that movies are made of. Like, if you want a dramatic story that is just filled with intrigue, the last part of the book of Genesis is the story of Joseph's life and the beginning of how Israel ended up in Egypt and how God set the stage for what was to come for the next 400 years. And it's just a fantastic story. But today we're looking at Joseph's life and experiencing like what he experienced. That's really the goal that I've had in mind all through this series is that we have to experience what he experienced, because God repeats it over and over again. I believe that God shows us patterns and rhythms so that we can find how he works and how he operates and what to expect. And it's in that sort of knowing what to expect and knowing what the way that God does things, it prepares us and causes us to be ready when it's our time, right? And so in making this shift, we've said this, the point throughout the series is that God is growing us through every experience to shift our focus from our current circumstances to our ultimate destiny. From our current circumstances to our ultimate destiny. Now, the challenge here, and we've covered these over the weeks, but the challenge here is to think about the fact that we have a destiny to live by. And that destiny, that thing that God has called us to, that life that God has called us to lead, to make a difference, to the value that he's put into us so that we can bring value to others, is our destiny. It's our destiny to bring. And when we recognize that we have that within us, then it leads us to a life that is more powerful, that is more meaningful, where we don't waste our life, but we spend our life. And hopefully by the end of our lives, we're all spent out. And a melted candle, a candle that has burned all the way down until there's nothing left but that little metal thing that the wick is attached to, that is a candle that lived its life well, right? That's a candle that made a difference. It brought light into the world for as long as it lasted. The worst thing you could be is a candle stuck in a drawer somewhere that gets all that stuff stuck to it and gets gross, you know what I'm saying? It gets all in the wax and, anyway, whatever. I had no plan on talking about candles this morning. So anyway, let's go back. All right, so this favor, this destiny that is on our lives, it's something that has to be acknowledged. We have to be aware of it. And it's in the awareness that we will move into it, that we will step into it. And until you become aware of it and step into it, you will live life as a victim. You will live life just letting it happen to you rather than as a conqueror making it happen, right? Because God wants to make life happen through you, not to you, right? He gives everything to you so that through you, He can lead you into a life of destiny that He has for you. And that destiny through you is to bring value to the people around you, to make a difference to the people around you in whatever area, in whatever way that it is that you do that. Whether you're a carpenter building houses for people, or you're a teacher teaching children, or you're a janitor making sure that the place is clean so that whatever happens there can happen. Whatever it is that you do, whether you're an engineer or I don't care, it doesn't matter. You're doing it for the sake of others, and you're doing it in service to the Lord, because the Lord is flowing whatever that is to you and through you. And when you acknowledge that, when you recognize that, now all of a sudden your days take on more meaning. They matter more, because now you're bringing value. You're adding something to the people around you. And the worst thing you can do is go through life and not realize that you are adding value to people, that you are making a difference to the people around you. Because then we just waste our lives, and it goes like water under a bridge that doesn't really make any difference. And no one wants to live that way. Some of us simply settle for that. And so my goal in this series is to call us to shift away from that. If that's anywhere in your life, if any facet of your life is in that you're not living aware of the value that you're bringing and the difference that you're making, then we need to shift away from that. Because of the favor of God on your life, you have a destiny. God has favor on your life. He has put favor in your life. He has shined His light upon you. You know why I know that? Because you're here. That's why. Because you're here. If He had not, you would not be here. You would be somewhere else. But I believe that God brings people into the presence of the teaching of His Word, into the proclamation of the gospel, into the proclamation of His principles and His laws and His everything that He gives to us. The Bible says that His word that goes out will not return void, because the word that goes out to the people that hear it have been chosen, have been strategically picked and individually selected to hear that word, because you're not hearing this word just as an innocent bystander. You're hearing this word to equip you, the saints, to go and to do the works of the service that God has called you to, because He chose you to bring value to the world. The sooner you own that, the sooner you take possession of that, the sooner you are going to find your breakthrough. Remember, this is the year of breakthrough. This is the year that we are pursuing our breakthrough. Well, here's what I believe. Your breakthrough is going to come when you identify the places that God is using you to add value to others, to make the most difference to others. Zig Ziglar said that if you will help people, help as enough people or as many people as possible to get what they want, then you will get what you want. You know why? Because it's in the helping people get what they want that your value begins to flow through you. And the truth is, at the core of us, all we want to do is add value to others. It's built into us because you are made in the image of God, and it is what God does. Right? That is what God does. God created the world. It flowed through Him, and creation was formed. And the system of the world was formed, and biology was formed, and science was formed, and physics was formed. All because God allowed it to flow out of Him into the world. And now we are the beneficiaries of that. And we are created in the image of God. Your spirit is created in the image of God, and you have that built into you to want to flow value out of you into the world and to make a difference. When you find that, you will find contentment. You will find satisfaction. You will find joy in your life. if you live with that in reverse, where you're trying to live from the outside in and all you're thinking is, well, what about me? Who's adding value to me? Who's making a difference in my life? Who's bringing it to me? You're going to be forever. Listen, that is like a black hole in space. It doesn't matter what you put into it. It's just going to go in and vanish, and you're going to forget about it and want more. It is insatiable. It will never be satisfied, because we are not built to live from the outside in wondering, what about me and where is mine? We are built to live from the inside out and pouring out, how can I make a difference? How can I add value? How can I serve you? Because it's in living that way that I am served, that that a difference is made to me, that I experience my own value. And in this world, listen, you have to think about this in a kingdom way, in a kingdom mindset. In this world, it doesn't come natural to think that way. In this world, the natural thought process is, what about me? Right? But even physiologically, when you say, what about me? Like every time that I say that, I feel like I have to cave in on myself. Right? I feel like I have to implode. And when I implode into myself, I just curl up into a ball in the fetal position, laying in a corner somewhere. What about me? Or I can explode. I can explode on you, right? I can release whatever it is that God has put into me out into the world and to make a difference, to bring value, to add to your life in whatever way God has given me to be able to do that. Whatever God is giving to me, I just want to pour it through me, because that's the only way I'm going to make a difference to you. And when we all begin to live that way, then you will find satisfaction in your days. Then you will find contentment. Then you will find the value that God has put there for you. And it seems counterintuitive. To give away means that I get. Welcome to the kingdom. Right? So because of this favor that God has put on you, you have a destiny. You have a destiny to add value. Because of the favor of God in your life, you will be misunderstood and challenged in this world, because you are in the world, but you are no longer of the world. You are here in proximity, but you are not of this world in belonging. You belong to a kingdom. You belong to the kingdom of God. And so you play by different rules. You operate by different principles. And those principles make a difference. Because of the favor of God in your life, sometimes what appears to be decrease to you can actually be increase from God's perspective. We've seen this throughout Joseph's life. That what looked like decrease when he was sold into slavery, when he was he was accused of something that he didn't do, and he was imprisoned. He was put in prison. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right in the world's eyes, but God used it to make a difference. We're going to see today why God, what his ultimate destiny was, and what he was able to live out his years to do, that ultimately saved Egypt, saved the known world at that time, but it ultimately saved the nation of Israel. Because of the favor of God in your life, you will rise to the top of whatever you do that is in keeping with your destiny. Listen, I'm going to make a bold statement. Are you ready? If you are a Christian, then I believe that if you are moving and operating and working in your destiny that God has called you to, you will rise to the top of whatever organization, whatever vocation, whatever thing that is that you are doing. You will rise to the top. But you will not rise to the top. Listen to me. Hear my words. You are not going to rise to the top by trying to climb up there on the backs of other people, by knocking them down and climbing up on them. You are not going to rise to the top by tearing everybody else down so that you get up. The way that you're going to rise to the top as a Christian is that you add so much value to everyone around you, and you make everyone around you so much better that everyone around you will come along and lift you up and put you on their shoulders. You don't have to knock them down to get on their shoulders. They will pick you up and put you on their shoulders when you live out that destiny to bring honor and value to the people around you. That's how you're going to do it. That is your calling. That is your destiny as a believer, as a Christian, as one who has been called by the Most High God. That is how it's going to happen. Now, it's very counterintuitive to this world's thinking, right? But we are in the world, but we are not of the world. We think different. We operate by different rules. We operate by a different set of laws. Do you know that the laws of the universe are set? They just are. Like, every time, well, not that time, but every time that I drop that, every time that I do that, it's going to fall. And it's going to, if I can do it at the exact same height, it's going to gain the exact same speed by the time it hits. It's going to hit with the exact same impact once it hits. It's going to do everything exactly the same because it is a universal law of gravity that says this is what's going to happen. It will happen that way every single time. Here's another law that I believe you need to get a hold of. If you will allow God to pour to you and through you to add value to people around you, you will rise to the top of whatever you do. I just believe that. I just believe that to be an absolute law. What you pour out is what you will receive back. And it will be proportionate. Here's the great thing about God's proportion. What you pour out will come back to you proportionately in God's eyes, which means pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing. So whatever you pour out will come back to you in abundance more than what, see, when the world thinks about this, they think, okay, if I give $1, I'll get $1. That's not how God operates. Right? If I give an hour, I'll get back an hour. That's not how God operates. The way that God operates is I give $1, I give an hour, I give whatever it is that I have to give, and God takes all of that, runs it through His system where it gains momentum and it gains abundance and it gains value and it gains volume, and then He presses it down and shakes it together and stomps it in there so that we are bursting and overflowing in the seams. Because it's from the overflow that we minister to the world, that we bring value to the world, to bring ministry to, we have 3 things we do as a church, right? Does anybody know what they are? If you don't know what they are by now, let's say them together, can we? We connect with God, connect with others, and connect in ministry, right? When we connect with God, we connect with the infinite source that is all-powerful, that never runs out, that never runs dry, that is full and of absolute abundance, that has no limitations whatsoever. Now, when we receive that, our natural reaction is to connect with each other, to connect with the people around us, because we understand that we are made in the image of God, and so are they. And it's in that abundance that we get to connect. And when we connect with one another, and all of that comes together, it's just like the worship service that we have. If you were standing here all by yourself, all in this room, and you were the only one singing, it wouldn't be quite as powerful, would it? Than to have a room full of people that are joining in one voice and lifting up praise all together in one accord, and that fills the room and it creates a power, right? Now, it's from that power, when we are connected with Him and connected with each other, that we begin to overflow in the abundance. And it's the overflow from which we minister to others. So we will never, listen, anytime that you're ministering in the overflow, you will not minister in a way that is resentful. Hello? You hear what I'm saying? Like you won't be, gotta go help the homeless, I guess. Right? Gotta go give an offering, I guess. Gotta go do, wrench it from my cold, dead hand. No. Absolutely not. You will do it with joy in your heart because it's the overflow. It's the abundance that God is pouring into you. It's splashing out all over you. Why wouldn't you give generously when it's splashing out all over the place? So this is what it means to walk and to live in the favor of God. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about this. The shift to the next level. To shift to the next level, we need to move from current thinking to destiny thinking. This is destiny thinking. That God has given a destiny to me. He has put in me something that I am here to bring to the world. I'm not just here by accident. I'm here on purpose, and that purpose is God's purpose. And that's called a destiny. Last week we talked about this. To shift to the next level, we need to grow in godly character. We have to grow in the character of God and become more like Him, right? Grow in the characteristics of God, becoming more like Him. And the Bible says, imitate Him, imitate God, imitate Christ. Christ says, imitate me, do what I do. The Apostle Paul says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. Follow me as I follow Christ. Do what I do as long as I'm doing what He does. This whole idea of growing in the characteristics of God is a huge deal. Today we're going to talk about this. To shift to the next level, we need to grow in our awareness of God's power and provision in our lives. Now, we've talked about this already throughout this whole service. You've already heard the sermon in bits and pieces, all the way through this whole service, from the very beginning, and the worship music, and the prayer, and the communion, and everything that we do, because we are becoming more aware of Him. The more aware you are of God, the more He will be alive and well in your life. Are you with me? When you're going through your Tuesday afternoon or your Thursday morning or your Friday night or whatever it is, when you're going through and all of a sudden you realize, I haven't really thought much about God today. I haven't really acknowledged what God's doing in my life. I want that to be a moment, not a moment that you think, listen, I don't want that to be a moment for you to feel guilty. I want that to be a moment of praise. I want that to be a moment of thank you, God, for the reminder. Thank you for causing me to become aware of you again. And then take that moment to have your own little praise service, right? Sitting at your desk, in your office, in your cubicle, wherever you are, and you just, Everybody will look at you like, what is wrong? Are you having a seizure over there or something? Nope. Just me and God having a moment. Because I think the more we acknowledge Him, the more we become aware of that, the more we will become aware of His provision in our lives, what He is doing in us, to us, through us, and for us. You see, God operates in prepositions. In, through, to, for, right? If you didn't know what prepositions are, that's what they are. Yeah. That's how He moves. That's how He operates. Joseph finds himself in prison. He's in prison because Potiphar, who had bought him as a slave, elevated him to second in command in his household. And because of his hotness, he was a good-looking dude, his wife showed him attention. And she wanted him to be with her. And so she comes after him. And so he says, how can I do this? I'm second only to Potiphar, he's put everything under my charge. How could I sin against God in this way by doing this horrible thing? And she gets offended and she tries to cover her tracks. And so he runs away and leaves his coat behind. And she uses that as evidence to say, look, he tried to attack me. And so they make these false accusations and he gets imprisoned. Potiphar sends him to prison. And it's in prison that he once again shows the favor of God in his life, and he's elevated to the top of the organization that he is in. Not by trying to tear down and knock down everybody else, but by trying to add value to the people, by caring for and watching over and providing for the other prisoners. And so the warden elevates him to second in command of the prison itself. And he runs the whole prison. A prisoner becomes the warden. And it's there in prison that he runs into two officials that had offended the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh had put into prison. And they have a dream one night. And in this dream, they come back concerned. They don't know what it means. They know it means something, but they don't know what it means. And so they come they come in all dejected, and Joseph says, "Why do you look so sad?" Because he cared about people and he paid attention and he watched what was happening around him, and he sees that they're dejected and he says, what's going on? And they tell him the dream, and so he interprets the dream, and one of them is a good thing. He's getting out in 3 days. The other one is a bad thing. He's going to lose his head in 3 days. So he tells them the dream, and it comes to pass. And when the one that's getting out is being set free, Joseph says, "Hey, just remember me when you get out there, when you're in the presence of Pharaoh. Speak favorably of me so that I can get out of this dungeon." And so he gets out, the baker gets out and goes about his business and forgets about Joseph completely. 2 years pass. 2 years pass. Can you imagine? Somebody interprets a dream that in 3 days you're going to get out of prison. 3 days later, you get out of prison and you forget about the person that told you were going to get out of prison. 2 years pass, and the Pharaoh has a dream. And in this dream, he's very concerned, and he looks around for wise men and soothsayers and witchcraft people or whatever else he can find to come and tell me, what does this dream mean? And no one can interpret it. And then the guy that got out of prison finally remembers. Hey, wait a minute. You know what? There was once this dude that told me what my dream meant. And so he comes to the Pharaoh, tells him about it. And so they get Joseph all cleaned up and shaven and showered and all of that. And they bring him in front of the Pharaoh. And he comes before the Pharaoh as a prisoner. Right? He started out a slave and he became the master of a household. He went from the master of a household to a criminal, and he went to prison as a criminal, and he became the warden. From the warden, he was seen by the authorities as a prisoner, and he's brought into Pharaoh's court. From that position as a prisoner, he will become the ruler of all of Egypt because of God's favor on his life. Pharaoh says, "I've heard that you can interpret dreams." Joseph interrupts him and says, "No, sir. I don't interpret dreams. God interprets dreams. The interpretation of dreams belongs to God, but it comes to me and through me." Now, he didn't say that. I'm saying that. But that's the way it works. You see, God can do anything. He can provide all the value that we could ever need, but he needs someone to deliver it to and through. That is you. That rhymed. I'm a poet and didn't know it. But listen, when the Pharaoh told him his dream, and Joseph started to interpret the dream, he says these cows come up and they're real skinny and gaunt and ugly looking, and then these other cows come up and they're fat and sleek and all this, and the skinny ones eat up the fat ones, and you know, it goes on. And ultimately, what the dreams mean, there are two of them, and what they mean is there's going to be 7 good years where we're going to be able to grow a lot of stuff, right? Preserve a lot of stuff and stockpile a lot of stuff. And then there are going to be 7 years of famine where all of that's going to be eaten away. And if you don't prepare well in those first 7, you're going to die in the second 7, right? That's basically what the dream was. And so Joseph then tells the Pharaoh, here's what you ought to do. You ought to find a really wise man, someone that's really good at managing people, someone that's really good at taking care of the needs of the people around them and showing concern for the people around and adding value to them, and let them organize things in a way that will work as a system so that you can save the food in the first 7 and provide for them in the second 7 when the famine comes. Well, Joseph had just been doing that in Potiphar's house when he took care of all the other servants and Potiphar's family, and he was elevated to second in command, managing and watching over everything. Training. Then he's put in prison. In prison, he starts caring for the prisoners, making sure they're fed and taken care of and clothed and all this. And through adding value to others and taking care of others, he is elevated by the warden to second in command, because this warden's like, this guy does it better than me. Why shouldn't I just let him do it and I'll take all the credit, right? Whatever. So he gets training in a larger organization. Now he comes into the presence of Pharaoh. Pharaoh describes to the Pharaoh, not saying this should be me, but this is what you're going to need, a person that can do this. Pharaoh looks at him, inspired by God, I'm sure, and says, I think you're that guy. You're the wisest guy I've been able to find in all this kingdom. Even though you're a Hebrew, you are the guy that I think needs to be the one second in command of Egypt. And God puts him in place, second only to the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh says, not a hand or foot will move or do anything without your permission. He's in charge. And it's from that position of being in charge that he begins to add value and he begins to save the world. So Pharaoh tells him his dream. Here's what I want to get to shift to the next level. We need to grow in our awareness. Joseph was aware of God's power and provision in our lives. He knew that God was making it happen. So, point number 1. Where did point number 1 go? There it is. Make the shift from self-reliance to God-reliance. Who are you relying on, you or God? Are you relying on what can come out of you, or are you relying on what can come through you? Right? Are you relying on what's already there and what can come out of you? Or are you relying on the infinite source that is God to come to you and through you? Because when you begin to do that and trust that God is involved in every aspect of your life, you will shift to the next level. Pharaoh used this opportunity to elevate Joseph to the second in command, the highest position in all the nation. What do you think Joseph could have done with that power? Number 1, I'm going to go find that dude that forgot about me for 2 years, right? I'm going to remind him who I am, right? I'm going to fix that problem. Then I'm going to go back up to Canaan and find those brothers that sold me into this mess. I'm going to take care of them too, right? That's not what he does. Joseph understood. This is part of God's plan. This is part of God's purpose. Make the shift from bitterness and unforgiveness. Make the shift from bitterness to forgiveness. He didn't let bitterness and unforgiveness clog up his heart, clog up his destiny, and hold him back from what God created him to be. Joseph didn't let current circumstances distract him from his destiny. I've covered that. I think my slides are a mess. Maybe I'm a mess. Number 3, I want to I want to share with you, make the shift from focusing on the evil to focusing on the good. Genesis 50:20. This is the whole reason we did this series, to get to this verse. This verse is what brings it all together. This verse says, but Joseph said to them, his brothers who had come and were afraid. Once they figured out who he was, once he revealed himself, they were deathly afraid. They thought, oh no, he's going to kill us. He's going to get revenge. He's going to take it out. No, Joseph understood God was using him. He was using them. He was using Potiphar. He was using the warden. He was using the Pharaoh to save the world, to save Israel. That's why he was there. That's what he was doing. And he says this, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Here's what I want you to know. Your destiny is to save many lives. In whatever place that God has put you, wherever God is using you, however God has equipped you, your destiny is to save many lives. The sooner you step into that, the more powerfully you will live and the more satisfied you will be. Amen?